back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Joni Young and I'm going to be showing you guys all step by step how to paint this today. We're going to be working on an 11 by 14 canvas. You can paint this on any size canvas that you want, of course. And I've got a few colors here that I'm going to go over. So the colors we're going to be using today are titanium white, neon orange, light blue, turquoise bright aqua green, phthalo blue, cadmium yellow light hue, black, and burnt sienna. I'll have a full list below in the description box of this video. Alright everyone, the first thing that we're going to be doing is choosing a blending brush to start painting the background with. So we're going to be working on the sky, and I've got, like I mentioned, if you missed it already, this is a 11 by 14 canvas. You can paint this landscape on larger or smaller canvas as well. I've just got a number 30 filbert brush here that I'm going to be using for my sky, but you can use anything sort of similar to this, larger or smaller as well. What I want to do is just get my brush a little bit wet to start, and then I'm going to take some of my light blue here, and I'm going to start adding it on the top of the canvas, side to side. Pick up a little bit more. This time I'm going to add a little bit of white, and I'm just going to blend the two very gently together here, not pushing too hard. So we get this little bit of a soft light blue and white streak in there that looks like some pretty little clouds. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit more white and blue and do that again, not over blending anywhere. I want to be left with those soft streaks in the sky for that cloud effect. You take just a little bit of water, and by adding a little bit of water to my brush, I can work out the rest of, or the remainder of the paint left in my brush. And I'm going to switch over to a number 9 filbert brush now. What I want to do is add some warmth, just a little touch of peachy clouds right in this section of the sky on the right. I'm not going to get my brush wet. The canvas is a little bit wet, so I don't want to move around or disrupt the blue I've got there too much. So I'm going to take a bit of titanium white and a little bit of my neon orange here. It'll dry a bit darker, especially over top of that blue, so I'm going to be more generous with my white. Okay, I'll mix it up, get a little bit here on the end of my brush, and I'm just going to tap and just really lightly pull that around. So see how it's starting to blend in a little bit to that blue? It's kind of nice and natural looking. I'll add just a little bit more down here, slightly overlapping and just making a smaller cloud. Now I'm going to take just a little bit more of the orange this time and really lightly dab that on there. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is come in with our mountains. So to start the mountains, I'm going to use a little bit of my phthalo blue and some black. And I'm going to start up here on the left. I'm going to come up, start it right here, so about a quarter of the way down from the top, and pull and kind of scoop down on an angle, and then just a light little scoop like this. And then we'll add another one from here. We're going to go a little bit edgier here, diagonal line, and then gently sweep. Now I'm going to wash my brush out. And I'm just going to lightly, with a little bit of water on my brush, move this paint around up some more black and blue. I'm going to start pulling and sweeping like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Make this a little bit darker. I love the blue and the black together, especially the phthalo blue, but keep in mind you can create this with any blue that you want. Cobalt, ultramarine, Prussian, even cerulean. Okay, now I'm going to go right into that light blue without washing my brush off. Light blue, there's a tiny bit of white in there. And I'm just going to very lightly apply that in a soft, dragging motion. So what I want to do is just show you guys exactly how to load the brush so you understand where the paint is being applied and how I'm using the brush. So I want to just turn it over like this, tap it into that light blue, and I'm going to apply my highlights on the inside, the left side of this mountain, and then this side is going to be primarily in shadow. This time I'm going to take some white along with that blue, and I'm going to hold my brush like this. So turn it over, put my fingers around, and on an angle, lightly, barely touch the canvas. Now this is where you can use a palette knife if you want. I'm using this brush the same way I would use a palette knife. I just like to use a brush. So now we've got these snowy mountains, and you can layer as much as you want. We're going to have just a little bit coming down here, a few hints in between those shadow areas there. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So again, load the underneath part of your brush up, and we're going to start on the top, follow that curve, very lightly drag, go ahead and get some more. Now what's also nice to do is add a little bit of that peachy color in there. So I've washed all the paint out. I'm going to get a little bit of peach with a white, get quite a bit on there. You can wait for your layers of paint to dry first, or you can apply it very gently like this without touching and pushing too hard. And I'm going to come down a little bit lower here with some of my light blue and white. I just want to bring this down a little bit and exaggerate this scoop. Add a little bit more of my blue in here. And this blue here is going to give us a little bit of a misty, foggy look, sort of at the base of the mountains and within this valley. And I'm just going to come up the other side now and add the last of my shadows. So I'm just taking my phthalo blue this time, and I'm going to go right in these little cracks here. Create some more peaks. So you can pull your lines in a scoop or diagonal like that, and you can also pull kind of straight down. I like to do a little bit of both. The next thing I'm going to do is take one of my blending mop brushes. This one happens to be an angle one, but it doesn't matter. You can use a round one. And all I want to do is just, without getting it wet, I don't want to get water on it. I just want to approach this dry. Just take a little bit of white and a little bit of that light peach color. And I'm going to start down here, so just a little bit lower than the mountains. And I'm going to go around in soft little circles like this. Now you can go clockwise and counterclockwise, it doesn't matter. Get a little bit more. And what this is going to do is create that really pretty foggy look and really set those mountains in the distance. And I think this is an important part of the painting because it adds a lot of atmosphere and depth within this painting. I just love this. I'm going to come along the side here too. Okay, now the next thing I want to do, I'm going to continue using this brush because this is a great brush for creating foliage. So we're going to start coming in with our trees and our bushes back here. And I just want to take a little bit of my white again once more and make sure that I have enough of this foggy look back here. I'm going to bring this up slightly higher this time. Okay, and then I'm going to go in without washing my brush off to my cadmium yellow light hue and a little bit of black. So that together, those two colors together make a beautiful green. Okay, so we're just going to start right about here, and I'm just going to tap, tap, tap. And if you don't have this brush, you can also use a fan brush or a filbert brush. Either one will work. Okay, so we've got some of that soft sunlit tree effect going on in the distance there. I'm even going to just graze the side of the mountain a little bit right there. And I'm going to start coming in with more black now. I'm adding a little bit of phthalo blue, just a little bit. So we're going to make this 2 to 3 shades darker now, but not solid black. And I'm going to start overlapping. We're going to go right across here because we need it to be dark for our waterfall to stand out. Okay, I'm going to mix up some more paint. Don't forget about that little hint of phthalo blue in there. So because we're going to be layering over with trees, you can just sort of blend this around and be a little bit carefree with it. We're just blocking in color. And then we're going to have a little area right in there. So I'm just going to Add a little line here, about an inch or so thick. I'm going to take a little bit of water on my brush, help release some of that paint out. So by adding these little bits of green down here where the water is going to be, this is going to also help to create the shadow that we're going to need. So it'll make the water look like there's rocks in it and shadows and more depth. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit more of my black now, and I'll start adding some darker layers. Okay, I'm going to rinse that brush out now. And I'm going to start coming in with the trees in the background. Now I really like to use filbert brushes for my trees, but you can use a fan brush if you like. So I've got a number 9 filbert brush here. I'm going to get a little bit wet, and I'm going to start with a little bit of phthalo blue, black, and just a hint of that yellow. So I kind of like to just pull and crisscross to load my brush. And I'm going to start adding some trees. Right about here, we'll just add a little line. And then this from here is going to be some water, of course. So we'll have our baseline here. Really load your brush up. And we'll add 2 or 3 trees here. We'll have one here on the end. Let's just go ahead and add that one. We're not going to see the whole tree because it's off the edge. We'll just start to tap a few little branches here. Add a little line for the tree trunk. Add a few little baby branches there at the top. And then let's go ahead and start our next one. We'll have another one. Let's add another one right here. And you're just going to leave a few spaces in between. Tap, tap, tap. It's a great brush for trees. Filberts are awesome brushes for trees and branches, and especially if you're just a beginner, they just help to make everything look a little bit tidier, and it can be hard to control fan brushes if you're just learning to paint. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow in here. I'm going to add these colors right down here as well. Just kind of tap, push. We're going to have a little bit of moss covered rocks down in this area. I'm going to go right down on the very bottom and just pull a little line across. Pick up some of that phthalo. And the phthalo with the yellow and black will make this pretty sort of foresty green color. A little bit of a cooler green, so we've got warm and cool. I'm going to add a few little baby trees here. So just a little pull and tiny little taps. Less pressure for smaller trees, of course. And then we'll go back over to this side. And I'm going to put one right here. Push and tap, side to side. I'm going to be generous with my black now so it really stands out from the background, and that my highlights are sure to stand out as well. We'll have a lot of nice contrast in these trees. Have a little bit more shadow on this side, so I'm just working out the remainder of the dark color there in my brush. I get a little bit of water on my brush here and just loosen up that paint, pick up a little bit more of the yellowy green. I want to make sure I have a little bit more of a darker underpainting here to set off my waterfalls. I'm going to take some yellow and I'm going to turn my brush on the side like this. Push, push, tap. And I'm just going to start adding some little highlights. I'll take a bit of white in there, do the same thing, make it a little bit lighter. So we can just tap, tap, tap. I'm just going to take a little bit of white with turquoise and blue, and I'm not going to wash my brush out. I'm going to go right from here and just start pulling my first waterfall. I will be switching over to another brush though. So I'm going to add my highlights to my trees in just a moment. I want to wait for that to dry a little bit, and we can come in and start adding the water now. I'm going to start with my phthalo blue and turquoise. So a little bit of each, but more turquoise than the phthalo. And I'm going to go right underneath, partially over top of that dark line. And we'll do that again. Turquoise, phthalo. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of water and brush over this spot right here that will have the waterfalls hanging over. I'm going to wash my brush out, and I'm going to go right into that turquoise and a little bit of white. I'm not going to mix them up too much, so see how you can see a little bit of turquoise and white on there. And I'm going to start right in here. I'm not going to overblend too much here because I want it to look nice and thick and create those different depths and movement in the water. Pick up some more turquoise. A little bit of phthalo and turquoise, and we're going to add some right over here. Bring that out. And take my phthalo blue, and I'm just going to lightly, see it's thin, it's not too thick. I'm just going to start coming in with the first color layer for my waterfalls, and then I'm going to switch over to another brush. And I'm going to clean my brush out and go back into my black, phthalo blue, a little bit of yellow. Bring this up a little bit higher here. Add more shadows. right away without washing my brush off, get some more turquoise. Okay, now we can start coming in with our highlights on our trees. So I'm going to go back over to a filbert brush. I'm going to apply this yellow, get quite a bit on there. And this will be the first of our layers of highlights. So I'm just going to start tapping over. Once this yellow dries, because we're applying it over the black, it'll dry darker than what you're seeing right here. Where I really want my highlights and my yellow to show up, I'll be adding a little bit of white with the yellow. See how I load the brush? I kind of push flat and wiggle. That fans it out a little bit and kind of just makes the perfect fan slash filbert brush. It's my little trick of mine. Maybe you guys do that too. I've kind of just developed that over the years, just learning how to kind of control the filbert brush and kind of manipulate it around. Okay, I'm going to add little taps and dabs in here. Some foliage, maybe some little ferns or leaves, moss, any of those things. Okay, reloading my brush, and I'm going to start applying highlights to this tree here. So when you're applying your highlights, you're going partially over the shadow, the base color. You can even go a little bit above and partially on. Now what I want to do is go into my white, like I mentioned before, and I'm going to make some of these highlights stand out a bit more. I'm going to take a little bit of my phthalo blue along with the yellow and the white. Mix them up. Take just a little bit more white here. And just tap a little bit here and there. And I'm just going to pull and drop here for the first little bit of waterfalls. And we'll have a little bit of greenery in here. Sometimes it looks really neat to have the waterfalls coming over top of moss. There's a little bit of moss there that can be underneath. And I'm just going to tap a little bit of highlights in here. Gentle little taps. And then a few little pulls. Just adding a little bit of light. A little bit of light here. Then right away I'm going to take my turquoise, a little bit of phthalo, and just add a suggestion of another little pool right there. A little bit more turquoise. See how there's a little bit of that mossy yellowy green in there as well? Okay, I'm going to start my waterfalls now, and I've got an angular brush. This is number 10. I would use a smaller one if I had it, but you can use these brushes for some interesting edges for your waterfalls because it's got this angle to it. You can come in and make larger, thicker in width waterfalls or narrower ones just by pulling and changing and turning your brush. So you'll know what I mean a bit more as you see me do this. I can demonstrate it better than I can explain it. So I want to get my brush wet first, and I'm going to take a little bit of the turquoise and the light blue, and I'm just going to start here at the top, push, gently pull, add a little bit of white in there. So just start right about here and then twist and pull and drop. Pull, gently twist, pull and drop. And I'm going to come in and wiggle. A little bit of white in there. So coming down here just to catch those foamy little bits that the waterfalls and the movement of the water create down at the bottom. So not only is this brush handy for the waterfalls themselves, but also for those little bits of foam. Okay, I'm just washing my brush out. I'm going to go into some white now. And I'm going to do the same thing. Just very lightly go over top, pull and drop. And I'm going to add some in here. A few little waterfalls. So I'm going to turn my brush pointy side to the left and drop. Take a little bit of white and turquoise. And then I'm going to add, and just turn your brush and approach your waterfalls however is comfortable for you. So you can just keep making as many waterfalls as you want. It just is really, really fun to create your own little sanctuaries, waterfall worlds and sanctuaries. So you can change the direction of your waterfalls by starting them from one side and switching over to the other side. Take a little bit more of that turquoise there. Add that. And then I'm going to go into my white. I'm going to come around the edge here and just pull, drop. I'm going to add a little bit here and there. Come around this corner. Using more white, I'm going to just pull and kind of just slice into that white to load my brush up. I love creating these little waterfall pools. Okay, now we're going to come in. And add that movement. Maybe this pool goes all around the edge there, around the corner. I'm going to go straight up and down like this. and create a few other layers in between the rocks and waterfalls. Now some of this is going to be covered up by our big tree that we're going to be adding. See how with an angle brush you can just really add and add and add. It's so fun. I pick a few spots here just to brush over. I'm going to take a bit of that yellow along with the white left in my brush. And I'm just going to tap in a little bit of foliage. Maybe a little bit of burnt sienna in there. A little bit of white, yellow, burnt sienna. Have some rocks. A few little rocks in there. And then I'm going to take a little bit of black with burnt sienna. I'm not going to over blend them or over mix them. I'm just going to push and dab. This way and that way, just for some shadow for my rocks. I'm just going to pull out. Add a little bit to the trees. Come up the side here, slightly overlap some of the waterfalls. Now for some of these waterfalls here, I need to have a little bit more control and make them a little bit smaller looking. I'm going to use a smaller brush. I'll be using a flat brush. So I've got this number 10 flat brush here. I'm going to get it a little bit wet, and I'm going to take my turquoise, a little bit of blue, and I'm going to start making these little cascading waterfalls. Take a little bit more of my phthalo blue. With that beautiful phthalo blue in there, I'm just going to take a very small amount. See how it's transparent? And I'm going to go over some of these waterfalls, giving them some beautiful shadows. I mix up a little bit of my turquoise with it. A bit of a lighter shade here. A little bit of water. I can add a little bit here and there. Okay, back over to my white. Just a little highlight. Okay, and then I'm going to come up. So I'm showing you how you can use a few different brushes, the angle brush, and a flat brush for your waterfalls. Now what I want to do is take my brush on the side like this and start pulling from the side kind of diagonally and scooping. This is going to give you a movement to those falls, make them look really graceful. So all I'm doing is just coming from the bottom and swirling and scooping up. You can do the same thing from the top, of course. Take just a little bit of turquoise here and go over this. You want the brightest part of your waterfalls to just be right where they're falling over the edge. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit more white with the turquoise and add some light right in here. A little bit of movement. A little bit of phthalo. So you can alternate your lights and darks. Add more or less of what I'm adding here. Change it up and you can't go wrong. It's going to look really pretty. Just grab a little bit of my yellow here. And now I'm just going to use the corner of this brush to tap in a little bit more foliage. All right, now it's time to start coming in with our tree. So I'm going to be using another filbert brush. This is a number 4. And I'm going to take black and burnt sienna. Get quite a bit here on my brush. And I'm going to start it from the top, right about there. Pull. I'm going to start pushing a little bit harder as I get further down so that the tree is naturally getting bigger at the base where it should be. Okay, I know this seems scary, this part, right? This part is actually really fun for me, but I know a lot of you guys, just because I've been painting so long, that I know what's going to happen, and I know that I need to do this to create the impact that I want in this painting. But I know it can be really scary for you guys, but just go ahead and do it. Remember, you're not out to paint a masterpiece. You're out here to just practice and have fun. If it happens to be a masterpiece, which I'm sure it probably will be, then that's just bonus, right? That's extra. So don't worry at all. You have to push through those fears. In order to step up a level in your art and your learning, you have to go for it. Okay, so we've got the main tree trunk here. Now I'm going to create some scoops, and I'm just going to lift this bar up so we can see what's happening at the top of the canvas. That just a little bit wider in there, a little bit wider. Okay. So I'm going to add a few branches. I'm going to have this one kind of come down and be kind of loopy. Another one that comes down here. Another one that goes like this. We're going to have these really cool branches that sort of scoop and then have the hanging moss off of them. I'll be using a little liner brush in just a moment. I'm going to make this branch a little bit thicker where it starts to come out from the tree. And then I'm going to get my brush a little bit wet. I still have that brown and black in there. taking a little bit of yellow, a little bit more of the black. I'm just gonna, like I would paint waterfalls, it's more of a flick though. So you wanna place where you wanna start your moss hanging and just start to pull and flick and drop down where you want your moss to be hanging. Okay, wherever we have these little scoops, I'm going to have some moss hanging off of those. And right across the top too. You can tap, tap, tap if you want to add a little bit more texture. I'm going to be using one of my mop brushes, I think, to demonstrate a little bit more. I want to apologize for any noise you guys might be hearing during this video. We've got a lot of commotion going on in the neighborhood. So sorry, I hope you guys aren't hearing all that. Take a little bit more of my yellow, tap, tap, tap. Now I'm going to use a liner brush, like I mentioned, to do some smaller vines and branches, and this is a number 1. So I'll take my black, yellow, and burnt sienna. Make sure you have some water on your brush. And I'm just going to add some smaller, skinnier branches, make them kind of crooked. We'll add a few coming down here. Okay, so just a little bit of pressure. I'm going to go back to my oval mop brush, and I'm going to take a little bit of white with my yellow and black for a highlight on the trees and for some texture. So just tap, gently push and tap like that to make it nice and flat, but also textured like. And we'll just start adding little taps. And then turn your brush this way as well. So this way and this way. Reload your brush often. Okay, I'll mix up a little bit more here, a little bit of white. Don't forget that white. Tap, tap, tap. We can add little pulls. So again, I'm doing a few different things. I'm using the full width, turning my brush this way and tapping. Then I'm turning it this way and tapping. You get that little bit of extra texture. And then I'm also pulling and flicking lightly. You can also use this for some highlights on the trees. Okay, I'm going to go in to a little bit more of my black and burnt sienna along with that yellowy green color. Just make this a little bit darker in here. And add just a little bit of shadows in around here, just to break that up a little bit. And then more burnt sienna. And I'm going to just lightly pull and drag. Okay, I think the last thing I'll do is come in with my filbert brush and just finish the tops of these trees by adding a little bit more black. Black and yellow. We can go over a little bit more here. Now that it's dry, I can see that the yellow did actually dry brighter than what I thought it was going to. Let's just add just a little bit more to our waterfalls here. Just sneak in a few more. Bring this edge up a little bit higher and add some more white. And then with a little bit of my peach color, I'm going to go over that foggy, misty area once more. Add a little bit more to the clouds up there. And the mountains. So if you just add like a really thin, transparent tinted white or just straight white, it will just make your mountains look like they're even more in the distance. A little bit more yellow here. Add a few brighter areas. And just a little bit here. One last thing, I'm going to use a longer liner brush this time with some water and some burnt sienna black. Add just a little bit more. To these branches. Make them stand out just a little bit more here. Again, just doing those little crooked scoop-like lines and then pulling and flicking. Come right along the bottom here. Add a little bit of that burnt sienna because it's a really warm and has red in it, and that looks quite beautiful with the turquoise. So I'm going to call this painting all done. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. Please leave a comment below or a question if you have one, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more. It's free, it doesn't cost a thing, and you'll find a lot of tutorials here on my channel that will help you grow as an artist and inspire you. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you all soon in my next video. Bye!